gonna be a little something more. I've got a plan in mind, a special thing in store. The light bulb inside my head says, get out and play, 'cause you never feel this way. It's my lucky day, it's my lucky day. It's my lucky day, my lucky day. Don't need a pot of gold, a rabbit's foot or to be told. It's my lucky day, it's my lucky day.
Hello, my friends. Happy Tuesday. I am so glad to see you, glad you are here. And I'm so excited about this conversation I get to have tonight. When I started doing the show, I was doing it all by myself, mostly because, as I told Chris Hennessy, I was a little chicken to have people on. And then I decided finally I would get brave but get brave in like a chickeny way by inviting my friends on. So I'm so excited to have this conversation with my friend Emily tonight. If you don't know Emily Griffith, you totally should. She's so great. So Emily Griffith is the passionate and creative mind driving the success of her business, Felt Right, a grief coaching service. Having experienced profound grief in her own life, Emily has turned her mourning into a source of strength, propelling her forward with unwavering determination. As the heart and soul of Felt Right, Emily's empathetic approach and unique insights have helped countless individuals navigate their journeys of loss and healing. Her experiences have made her a beacon of hope and understanding for those seeking solace in times of sorrow. Beyond her dedication to helping others, Emily finds solace in the written word, cherishing reading and writing as a means of self-expression and connection. When she's not immersing herself in books and penning her thoughts, Emily can be found enjoying the simple pleasures of life, taking peaceful walks and finding balance through yoga. Emily's profound impact on the lives of others and her commitment to sharing her own transformative experiences inspire all who cross paths with her. She continues to make a positive difference in the world through her business and personal passions, one heart at a time. So, Emily, hi, welcome.
Thank you so much. Before we even get into anything, and I don't mean to completely derail our topic, but ChatGPT wrote that bio.
Oh.
And I say that because just for anyone who's out there who could maybe use this information, writing a bio for myself is like a torturous nightmare. And I'm like, okay, because I would never write that. What you just read, I would never write that. So to put it in AI's hands and just to give them some basic facts of like, this is what I do, this is what I'm about, can you write a bio? And that's what it produced.
Wow. I am super impressed. Like, it really sounds like somebody who knows you really well wrote this for you. And it's interesting because normally I read AI stuff and I'm like,
That's the beauty of AI. You can give it prompts, you can give it just information, but like the beacon of hope, like these phases, I'm like, I would never write myself in that way. So
well,
in a way, it was a healing practice for me to do that.
I love it. And I'm so glad you're here, Emily. And I'm so excited to have this conversation with you. And there's nobody else that I would want to have this conversation with, because I think it's so profoundly important. And there is nobody I've connected with lots of people who get it, but nobody who gets it like you. So for those of you who are just tuning in, I have my friend Emily Griffith here, and we are talking tonight about healing through writing. So if you are here, we'd love to know, drop a comment in the chat. Let us know that you're here and we're not just talking to each other, which is totally fine. Like, I'm happy talking to you, Emily, all day long. But if folks are listening, I'd totally love to know. So When I think of you, and I thought of kind of our friendship, which goes back quite a while now in,
Mhm.
the internet terms, um, one thing we connected over immediately was this love of writing and healing through writing, and the ability that we both have to put words together in a way that just make us feel things. I know you're always writing content that I think, oh my gosh, I've never read anything more beautiful. I
Mhm.
don't know how Emily could write something more beautiful, and then the next day you do. So I just absolutely love that about you.
I mean, clearly, I feel the same way about you. And before, when we were just talking about, how we even connected or what brought us together, clearly it was our love of writing. I'm writing in this style, in this way that we do. To be so open and vulnerable and share with people our trials and tribulations, our wins, our losses, and the fact that writing has been such an integral part of all of it. Um, I just remember, like, good things come to those who journal. I'm like, yes, like, grief has profoundly changed my life, but grief in tandem with writing and cathartic writing, free writing, has changed my life in a profound way. So I just think about what you put out there on LinkedIn day in and day out, of just sharing such a personal experience and then tying in how writing and journaling has like helped you through that. It's like I can't resonate anymore. I'm just like, yep, exactly that. Like every time I read your post, I'm interacting with it like, she gets it. We definitely get each other. We definitely speak that same language of writing being such a integral tool in our lives in order to live better ones, really.
Yeah, for sure. And then we've got our friend Mary with us today.
Oh,
And
Mary.
Mary is another one of us who really just, oh my gosh, Mary's words are so beautiful. And I've gotten to journal with Mary, and she's been so generous in sharing her words with me. And it just every time gets me right here. Like she has this way of putting words together that just make me feel all the things. Um,
Same. She puts out these beautiful visual images too, whether it's like her drawing, her doodling, coupled with the words. I think that's really powerful. So I've experienced that with Mary as well.
I love it. So let's, if you don't mind, can you start by sharing your story? How did you find writing? What did that look like for you?
I'm like, I don't remember a time that I didn't write. Like I think about in school, like in sixth grade, having to write op-eds for the newspaper and being so excited about it and writing it and getting it published and being seen and heard. I think about in high school when we had this teacher who was berating and belittling our class, and I took to writing him a letter to communicate how I was feeling, like just so hurt. Like I couldn't verbalize it, but I writing it just helped me release it, along with getting my message across that like you can't talk to me like that. I couldn't verbalize it, but I could definitely write it down. um when my dad passed away, he passed away suddenly of a heart attack. I was 19, and one of the first things I did was I wrote him a letter, like getting some sort of closure. It's always been a part of my life, always, like from as early as I can remember, whether it's writing or just being obsessed with the written word. Like I was reading at a really young age, and but my mom, when I was like around 8 or 9, would like read to me before I go to sleep. Judy Bloom, I remember, like Blubber, like, and she would read me a chapter and I would just beg. I'm like, please, 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 like, can you just read me another chapter? Like the way people binge Netflix shows, like I was binging like books. And I just am in awe of writers. I'm in awe of like creating these worlds in that way. So to take it, I mean, I'm not a fiction writer, but being able to create and see my world so clearly through writing has been just a blessing and a gift. And both my mom and dad wrote, they kept journals. So I think it was very like, oh, okay, like this is what we do. We write, great. And yeah, anytime that I was in some sort of, whether it's conflict or just wanting to express something, I always turn to writing, be it a card, be it a letter, something. That's just my favorite way to communicate. It's my favorite way to process. And that's been instilled in me since I can remember, as early as I can remember.
I love that. And I love how your parents both kept journals. I have a similar story, except I don't know where it comes from because I don't come from a family of people who kept journals. I don't come from a family of people who are really that interested in talking about feelings or exploring feelings. So my mother will look at me sometimes and she's like, "Where do you come up with all of this?" And I'm like, "I just do." I mean, I have the same stories of just always loving to write when I was a kid
Yeah.
and was praised for writing, which made me want to write more and just using it in my life in so many different ways. But I always have said, like, I think the most clearly when I'm writing, and that writing is for me the fastest path to figure out how I feel and what I think. And if I need to make a decision, that's what I do because that's how I know I'm going to find the answer the fastest.
Yeah. I don't know if you have, I don't know if we've even talked about this, but The Artist Way by Julia Cameron. So a thing that's been so instrumental for me, like later on in my life when I discovered her, was one of her tools is doing like 3 pages like of unedited, just like word vomit. And to do it first thing in the morning when you wake up, because like your subconscious is still kind of open. So you start at first, like when you're doing, you're like, what am I doing? Why, this is so silly. Like, what is this? And then it just turns into like, wow, I was thinking that, I was feeling that. Okay, this is news to me. And I love that exercise so much because she says, like, you start to then start talking about and writing about the same thing over and over to the point where you get kind of sick of yourself and you're like, okay, now it's time to do something about this. So writing has been instrumental in that way too. And what you were just talking about, like knowing what you're thinking, know what you're feeling, it's that Joan Didion quote of exactly that. Like I write to know what I'm thinking. I write to know what I'm feeling. I write to know what I'm afraid of. I write to know, and I'm like, yeah, same. I'm with you guys. That.
Yeah. And for me, what's interesting when I tell my story, and I know you've heard me tell this, that I found even though I had written, loved to write when I was a kid, I really found journaling when I was an angsty teenager. And I was having a really hard day, and none of my friends could come to the phone. And I didn't know what to do with all the stuff. And so I grabbed a notebook, I grabbed a mechanical pencil. It wasn't even a pen. And I just wrote. And I remember that I wrote for a really long time. And when I was done writing, I felt better. And I liked that feeling. And so I picked up my pencil the next night and again the next. And before I knew it, I had this really robust journaling practice that really was there for me and really helped me. I don't know. I think of it as like putting all the reps in for years and years, not really knowing why I was doing it. And sometimes I journaled more and sometimes I journaled less. But it was always there when I needed it. And so I know a lot of folks have heard me say how I turned to journaling the night my marriage ended. My husband came home that night and said, "Oh, I've finally decided I'd be happier not being married to you." Like, where do you go from there, right? For me, it was going to the page of my journal because I knew I had a choice to make. I could either allow myself to spiral into negativity or I could reach out and grab hold of every good thing that came my way. So it started in my journal. I took up my pen and I forced myself to write what I was grateful for. And I will tell you, it was really hard because I did not feel very grateful. But I came up with 8 things. And I thought, if I can be grateful for 8 things on this hardest day of my life, I'm going to be okay. And that practice of journaling that muscle I had built over years and years was there for me. And it was just as natural as breathing to be able to turn to it to give myself what I needed.
Even when you just started that story and you said, where do you go from there, comma, right? R-I-G-H-T, but like, where do you go for there, comma, W-R-I-T-E? Like, the dots are connecting with me for sure.
Yeah, I love that. I've told this story that way so many times, and I've never made that connection. I love that you did.
Awesome.
Yeah. So, can you share a little bit about what your regular writing practice looks like?
I go through seasons with it. There are times when I will be so diligent with my morning pages. I mean, I write in some capacity every day, be it if it's literally waking up and writing on LinkedIn, whether it's waking up and doing my morning pages and then having a more like thought out, outlined thing for LinkedIn. But there's sometimes where it's like it becomes like another thing on my to-do list, and I'm just like I'm at capacity and I'm like I can't do this. So it's like I don't know if it was you. I think it was talking about the different ways of journaling. And I don't know if you have like the 5-minute journal or like the 1-line journal. Like sometimes it's that. It's like at the end of the night, just writing, like summing it up the day, or in the morning, waking up and writing the intention. It's not, I can't say that I am consistent in doing the same type of journaling or the same type of writing. What I am consistent is I write every day. Some days look different than the
Well,
others.
and I love that because I don't know. I always say if I had to journal the same way every day, I would have given up a long time ago. And I see that
Yeah.
with people that I work with who are like, I can do it for a month and then I just like, I don't know, I just revolt. I just won't do it
Yeah.
anymore. And I think when we allow ourselves to be flexible and to maintain consistency, like I love how you said you write in some capacity every day, but don't hold yourself to an expectation because I see so often people say, oh, I'm going to do morning pages. I'm going to write 3 pages every day. And I've seen a lot of people quit really fast. Um,
Oh, day 2, it's over. Like,
Yeah.
no.
And, it's funny. I'm thinking of a friend of mine that I talked with a couple of years ago. And she's like, I really want to do morning pages, but I have to find the perfect journal because I can't write 3 pages this size. Like that's a lot. But I could maybe write 3 of these pages. And I looked at her and I was like, well, what about instead of writing for pages, what if you write for time? What if you just set your timer for 10 minutes? And she's like, oh, like it had not occurred to her that there was another way to
Yep.
do it. That morning pages is a specific exercise for a specific purpose. And if that is your jam, cool. And if it's not your jam, that's cool too. Find something that is. But having a place to really express your thoughts and to be able to just take that time and reflect to figure out what you need, that's something we all deserve, however it looks.
Absolutely. But that I am so your friend. I am so like, I need the perfect journal. I need the perfect this. And it's like, that gets me absolutely nowhere. So just committing to whether it's 3 words or 300 words, like I'm going to write something today. And like that for me is enough. It's more than enough. And more times than not, when I'm like, okay, I'm going to write 3 words today, I'll get to the 3rd word. And then I'm like, oh, I got a little bit more in me. And then I'll just go. And that has served me so much.
Yeah. I just want to show you this. I know you've seen this. This is my 1-pager. You'll notice I didn't
Yes.
answer any of my questions this morning. I filled out my schedule. I came up with some to-dos, most of which I have not done. So if you see your name, I'm sorry, you'll be on tomorrow's list. Some habits I want to track that I've done 1 of so far, but I've done 1. I've done 1 of my 5, which is great. And I filled out the top half with my Ikigai verse and my new moon intention and an affirmation, tracked some data.
Ooh.
But it's okay. It's really okay because this morning I didn't feel like I needed to do those questions. And it's okay.
And I love that you are so free with that. Cause like if I had that, I would be like a prisoner of it. Like I can't walk away from this until this is all filled out. So I just need a blank page. And it's like whatever comes out, comes out. and that's it.
Yeah. Well, I love how there are so many ways to do it. And again, when we give ourselves the freedom to approach it, really thinking of what do I need today? Because I have days when I write, 3, 4, 6 pages in my journal, double-sided in beautiful penmanship. And then I have days where I sit down and I call them sticky days. I can't pull 2 coherent sentences out of my brain. And all I can write on my page is, I have nothing today, right? So giving
Yeah.
myself that grace and thanking myself for showing up and being there. Because I always say, I journal every day because I need to. Because when I do that, I'm showing the universe, this is where I am. Here's where you can find me when you think I'm ready for the answers.
Absolutely. And what's so brilliant about that is like the beauty of a personal journaling practice is that you're the only person that has to understand it. So if you're sticky, messy, like incoherent, but like you can look at it and be like, I know exactly what this is. Mission accomplished.
Yeah. So can you talk a little bit, Emily, about why you think it is that words have such capacity to heal?
Okay, so words, like even zooming out a bit from writing. I know for me, oh my gosh, like I was thinking about one of the greatest gifts that I ever got in my life was an ex-boyfriend of mine made this mixtape, but of letters. So he had an intro, he had an outro, and he had like 8 or 9 different letters because he knew like that's how we would write. We would write letters to each other. And it was like, wow, this person really knows me and gets that like the written word for me is always going to land. And I still have it. It's the most thoughtful thing ever. So for someone like me, words, be it watching a TED talk or listening to some podcast or even like listening to music and listening to the lyrics of the song or reading a book, writing, it just lands for me. It's just, but more so with writing, honestly. I don't know, the way that I process, like when I hear something, I have to like pause it, kind of go back, replay it to really have it sink in. Whereas with the written word, it just absorbs and it just connects to my soul in a way that no other medium does. So I'm not answering your question. Like, why? I mean, it's just for me, it's always been that way. Like, the 5 love languages, one of them is words of affirmation. Like, that's, and every quiz I've ever took for that, it's always been number 1. So for me, words are just so powerful. A friend of mine, when I was in yoga teacher training, she's like, you turn words into movements. And that I thought was so profound. And I'm like, yeah, that's, be it in a yoga class, be it in whatever I'm writing, like, yes. So that's always been, it's just the healing is the byproduct of that. Again, since forever, since as long as I can remember, words, writing, it's just, I don't know if I have really like a clear explanation for it. Like it just has always been.
I'm stuck on what she said about you turn words into movement. Like that is so beautiful.
Right?
I think if somebody said something like that to me, like that would just be it. That is like, I don't know how you can get a bigger, better compliment than that.
Agreed. It stopped me. Like I was in the middle of talking about something and she just said it. And it's like, we both just stopped. Like, what did you just say? What was that? Okay. Like I had to sit and process that because I agree that was the ultimate compliment.
Yeah. And I will say I am a words of affirmation person too. I always tell my husband, like, tell me all over and over how wonderful you think I am while you empty the dishwasher. Like that was like make my day totally complete.
Same.
And it's interesting because again, words have always been so important to me. Writing has always been so important to me. I come from a family of readers. I don't come from a family of writers unless people are secret writers and I just haven't found out. And I now live in a house where I'm the only writer. And I always say, like, I could leave my journal open on the kitchen counter and everyone will walk right by. I mean, I joke because my husband figures he'll hear it all eventually, anyways. My children can't imagine I'm that interesting. But like, to have this thing that's all mine, that I don't have to share with anybody, not just my journal, but this like practice. I want it for everybody who wants it. Like people ask me all the time, oh, do your husband and children journal? And I'm like, oh, that's sweet. But my husband does pick out like the absolute best cards. Like he's not super verbose, but he will find for every occasion the card with the absolute perfect message, and it gets me every time. Ashok, I love this. Words are the
Yes.
wrapping paper for empathy. That
He always says, like, I can't talk about him and his wordsmithing enough. Like
yeah.
the visuals that he paints with his words are my absolute favorite.
Yeah, we are so lucky, aren't we, to have such a beautiful community of gorgeous writers. I just want to pop this one up on the screen. Where did it go? Yeah, very highlighted. She like this. When you think I'm ready for the answers. Yeah, and again, anyone just tuning in, I had said I journal every day because by showing up every day, I'm showing the universe this is where it can find me when it thinks I'm ready for the answers.
You know what's so interesting, what you were talking about of like leaving your journal open? I have found, be it with clients or with friends, that a lot of them are afraid that if they do write down in their journal, that someone will read it. And it is a genuine fear of theirs. So I'm like, listen, you can write and rip it up, burn it. It's the point isn't to keep it if you don't want to keep it. The point is to have a space where you can release and like let it go and like process and figure it out. You don't have to hold on to it if that doesn't work for you.
Yeah, that is so, so important. And I always, when I have this conversation with people, will recognize the tremendous privilege that I've had. That
Mm.
when I was, when I was a teenager, I didn't have anybody making a production about what I read. People weren't sneaking in my room to read my diaries. Like, I think I maybe would have been flattered if they did, because it would have shown people like we're that interested in the private thoughts in my mind. But really, like I have always had all of the privacy that I needed, but I understand not everybody has that luxury and that gift.
Yeah.
And so I always say, well, sometimes depending on your situation, sometimes it's the bigger deal you make about something, the bigger deal it'll be to somebody else. So just don't make a big deal about it. Sometimes it's keep it out of sight if you need to keep it in your car or at your office or in a lockbox. If you have to type it to keep it somewhere password protected, or just like you said, write it and then get rid of it. Because for me, the act of writing is the healing part. Someone asked me today, like, how much of it is of journaling is the writing and reflecting, and how much of it is the going back to reread? And I was like, great question, because I very seldom go back and reread.
Same.
And the things that I go back to look for, I have a specific purpose for going back to look. Maybe it's how did I handle that situation? Or it's usually more for data tracking, like how am I doing on progress toward my goals or something like that. I'm much more likely to go back. But anything that's just like, I feel all of this stuff, I just have to get it out so that I can like function. Those I don't go back and revisit. Serves its purpose just getting it out. So if you write pages just to, get stuff out, it's okay to throw it in the fireplace or the fire pit or tear it up or shred it or whatever makes sense to you.
Yeah, for me, so I have my iPad and I have good notes on my iPad because I had 87 journals, like half written in them, just like all over the place. I'm like, okay, I got to figure this out. And the beauty of this is just what you were talking about. If there's something where I just need to write and release and like, okay, I don't want to revisit or look at this or think about this ever again, take the erase and it's like it never happened. Or I can just hit the delete and that page is gone.
I love that too, because it's like the perfect blend of technology and old school, like the tactile nature of writing, because there is magic in putting pen to surface and just
Yes.
that physical action.
One of the highlights of my life, I was at a Julia Cameron. Clearly, I'm a devotee, obsessed with her. I was at one of her workshops, and that was a question that I asked her because she's very big on like it has to be hand, pen, paper. I'm like, what if you have like an Apple Pencil and an iPad? And she's like, oh, you might have figured something out. And I was just like, Julia Cameron thinks I figured something out. Like, I'm done here. Okay, thank you. I can leave now. I got perfect. Thanks so much.
I love that. But for anyone who's listening, if you're like, oh my gosh, I can't stand writing, I don't write fast enough,
Mm,
I don't write beautifully enough, like there's no rule that says you have to have nice penmanship to have a satisfying journaling practice. Um, People comment all the time when I show snippets of my journal. They're like, your handwriting's so pretty. I'm like, that's because I copied the dictionary in fourth grade because I'm a nerd and wanted beautiful penmanship, right? But like normal humans don't do those things,
I
right?
have chicken scratch handwriting. My handwriting is horrible.
But if writing by hand is the barrier for you, then type it. If typing is the barrier, find an app and record it. If words just aren't your thing and drawing or art is, you
Mm,
can use that for journaling because there's so much healing. I always say that, my no one in my family journals. And my mom was funny. She said to me one day, she's like, I kept a journal for a little while, and then I was worried that someone would find it someday and read it. So I got rid of it.
mhm.
But then I showed her this art journaling I was doing in a class last year, and she's like, but I would do that. And I was like, then you should do that. Like, that would
Yeah.
really be healing for you. Oh, I love this. Writing opens the gridlock of words on the roads of your mind so that emotional traffic can move forward. Oh my gosh, that is
It's
so
the
beautiful.
best. Always.
So beautiful.
Yeah.
And then we've got a friend in Iowa. We're not sure who you
Oh,
are because you're logged in as LinkedIn user, but hi, Iowa. Really happy you're here. So, Emily, tell me, do you have your clients' journal? Like, do you use writing with your clients, and what does that look like?
so when I first started Felt Right, writing was like a core pillar. And we would start sessions with a prompt and we would end sessions with a prompt. As my business evolved and as I evolved and as my writing evolved, there were some clients who were just like, you know what, like writing is so not for me. Writing is not my jam. So, okay, I'm meeting you where you're at. So, what you were just talking about before, there's so many different outlets and modalities and ways to journal. People automatically assume, like, oh, you must mean this. It's like you can do art, you can do doodling. I mean, there's so many different, you can do a voice memo to yourself. That's journaling. Um, so it depends client by client, like what they need, what they want, what they ask for. I offer it up and I tell them, I mean, the the basis in finding my company was how writing was so instrumental for me in my healing process. So I definitely want to offer that to whoever comes and works with me of like, this is what I did and this is what helped. Like we can figure out a way for you. And if writing just so happens to not be it, we'll figure something else out.
I love that. I absolutely love how you meet your people where they are. And that has been something that has been so valuable to me that I've been learning over the last few years is meeting other people where they're at, but also meeting myself where I'm at, which is really another way journaling
Mhm.
comes into play, not just in how I journal, but using journaling as a way to meet myself, to figure out how am I feeling? What is this like energy I feel in my body? Oh, that's this emotion.
Yeah.
And then figuring out what to do with it. I always say that journaling is the best form for me of self-care because not only is it self-care in and of itself, but it opens the door for me to figure out what other self-care is needed.
Same. I mean, again, like the different styles of writing, there's just some days where I'm just so overwhelmed with emotion. And if I can take a beat and pause to go get my journal to like just put it all out there, it is so conducive to really gaining clarity. Because it's like, oh, I'm so jumbled up with all these conflicting emotions. Like, I don't know what I'm thinking. I don't know what I'm feeling. I'm feeling this one second, I'm feeling that the next second. But having the words reflected back at me, it's like, there's sometimes where my hand is just going and like I don't even know what I'm writing. And sometimes I'll read those back and be like, wow, did not know that I was thinking that, did not know I was feeling that. Okay, thank you, journal. Thank you, writing.
Well, and that reminds me of the 3 guidelines that I always ask people to follow when we journal together, which are be open, be brave, and be kind. Be open because we don't always know what we're going to see on the page. Sometimes, just like you said, sometimes we think we know what we'll see. And sometimes we are like, oh, I didn't know that was in there, right? So just be really open to whatever comes up. Be brave because sometimes we're not going to like what comes up. Like,
Ooh.
oh, oh, and if you're listening and you know that feeling, like you are not alone. And just,
No.
I don't know, sometimes we see things on paper and we're like, ooh, oh, that does not feel good. That doesn't make me feel good about me. That doesn't whatever, right? But be really brave because even if we don't like it, even if it's uncomfortable, we've now given it a little bit of space. I always say there's just enough space between my brain and the page to figure out what to do with this. And then again,
Yeah.
we've got that perspective and we can figure out what we're going to do with that thing because it's no longer so close to us that we can't see it. And then be kind because this is really hard work. It's really like no, even if writing comes intuitively and even if you are comfortable being vulnerable with yourself, it is still hard work to identify our feelings and work through them and the hard things we have. So just be really kind to yourself as you do it because if we're being mean to ourselves, it's not going to get us anywhere.
That is, I love those guidelines. And it's so interesting. I think about even if I feel like I'm just calm, I'm just going to do a free write, like it's totally fine. It's like where I start versus where I end are just like completely like opposite of each other in the most interesting way. And it's like, oh, I thought I was like okay, but clearly I came to here to the journal and I'm discovering some things that weren't even at the
Yeah.
surface. They happened to come out on the page as I write. So to give yourself grace and to be kind to yourself, I mean, valuable
Yeah.
advice.
Yeah. So, speaking of advice, what advice would you give people or do you give your clients for folks who are looking to find healing through their writing?
The first thing that comes to mind is to go slow. And what I mean by that is like in any sort of like self-care thing, we're like, okay, starting Monday, I'm going to be this like prolific journaler and I'm going to eat all the healthy things and drink my, all that stuff, right? It's like, I have all these illusions of grandeur and yet I fall flat every time. So when I mean start slow, it's like whether if it's like you were talking about earlier of like a 3 to 4 minute timed writing, or whether it's you Google or you go to one of your journaling mini retreats and you have a prompt that gets you thinking about something that you typically wouldn't be thinking about. Um, but the goal really is like just to start and like what's the path of least resistance in doing that is like just keep it as basic, go as slow, because when you go slow but you're consistent with it, that's how the habit gets created and that's how you strengthen the muscle and like what you were talking about earlier, like getting the reps in, but doing so in a way that's just like not this daunting overwhelming task like, oh, here's another thing on my to-do list that I didn't get to today. It's like, no, we don't want to do that. We don't want to put it writing as like a bad taste in your mouth. It's like just be following your guidelines, which were beautiful. But yeah, just ease yourself into it and not put all this pressure that you have to like get it right, because there is no such thing as getting it right with writing. It's the thing that's going to help you, whatever is going to help you get the pen to the page. And for me, it's slow and easy, and like this doesn't have to be this big overwhelming chore.
Yeah, I love that, because journaling should never be a thing that we do just to check it off the list. If we do, then I don't want to say it's not worth our time, because that's not true, but we're missing,
Good
right?
point.
Like if I get so stuck on my one pager that like, oh my gosh, I have to do it, and I do it to meet the letter of the law and not the spirit of it, I'm depriving myself of really an opportunity, right? But when I can approach journaling with curiosity, like, what will I discover today, right? I always choose prompts that uplift me, because I don't need any help being negative. Like I do that plenty
Yeah.
well on my own. But having a practice that really lifts me up and moves my life forward, because for me that's the ultimate point of journaling, is not, it's great to be able to get all the stuff out, but then what do I do next? How do I use my writing to
Yeah.
move my life forward? And when I do it well, like there's nothing else like it.
And for me, it's a marriage of both. Like I have to be able to have space where I could just let it rip as far as what I'm feeling emotionally, but then coming to, okay, like here it all is, here's the mess, like in all of its glory. Now what do I do with this? And how can I don't know if productive is the word, but like put myself into some action that, to your point, is going to like help me move forward with it. And that's the thing with writing, it serves all those purposes.
The image that came to me as you just said that was like cleaning a closet, right? Like anytime you clean a
Yeah.
closet, it always gets so much worse before it gets better, right? So like getting all that gunk out is like getting everything out of the closet, taking inventory, seeing what it is. And you're like, oh, I had this thing. Ooh, I didn't know this was still here. I thought I got rid of that a long time ago, right? Like taking inventory of what we
Mhm.
have, and then we get to decide what we put back and how we put it back and what that looks like. And maybe we don't want to put it all back. Or maybe there's just like one or two sentimental items we want to keep and we want to put it in a shadow box. We don't want to shove it in the corner in the closet, right? But we don't know how we're going to,
Mm,
what we're going to find, or what we're going to do with it until we see what we have.
yeah. But I love that it's not one dimensional or one sided for you. It's like, yes, we need to do that work, but then there's like the part two of like, okay, now we get to make some choices here of like how we want to go about this. That's
Yeah,
great.
I love how there are just so many layers to it, and not just how many opportunities there are to journal in different ways, but then to decide again what our journaling is going to do for us, to look at all of the different ways that it can heal, right? Looking at, turning to my journal when I'm feeling sad or angry or insignificant or afraid, turning to my journal when I am overwhelmed and I don't know what to do, turning to my journal when there's a loss of some kind that I need to process.
Mm.
Like there's so many opportunities that journaling can help support us.
And again, for me, I've been journaling on and off. Preteens as a before I was even double digits. So it's always been like the method for me. And what you were talking about earlier, if your family of like not being one to like really emote or express their feelings, like my family wasn't like that either. And I think with my mom and my dad doing their type of journaling or writing, that was like their outlet that they didn't necessarily come to us with, like their kids. And I feel like I was kind of similar and like, okay, if I need to figure something out or talk about something or express something that's really personal and vulnerable, and I don't necessarily want people knowing about this. Like my journal became my like trusted confidant in that.
Yeah, and it's a great place to practice, because if we can be vulnerable with ourselves, it's easier to be vulnerable with those that we care enough about to be vulnerable with.
Yeah. And you do this beautifully on LinkedIn. Like the way that you go into your life and how writing has helped you through it. It's a showing and telling. Like you're showing us through a personal example and then telling us how we could do that for ourselves. And that's just, it's, you always give some sort of value every time that you post on LinkedIn about that, because you're teaching us how we can do it for ourselves while also like telling us we're not alone in what we're going through.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing I didn't realize when I started writing about journaling was how much I had to say about journaling, but also for me, like I like journaling. It is a really helpful tool. I value it. But my passion is really for helping other people discover the magic of journaling, which is really interesting. And I did not expect to find that as part of my journey. Watching people build journaling practices that support them just brings me so much joy. And if we can do that at a time when our lives are pretty like even keeled, it puts that practice in place for when we really need it. Because it's really hard to reach for a life jacket if you've never put one on before.
Yeah. And as the waters get choppy and turbulent, and when you need it, and it's like, I'm not, wait, what do I do? How do I save myself here? How do I get out of this? So yeah, to be able to start the practice, be it when you're, like you said, even keeled, and then just build up that muscle memory so that when you are in the thick of it, you're able to turn to it when you need it the most.
Yeah, it's one of the greatest gifts we can give ourselves, for sure. So, Emily, can you tell us a little bit about Felt Right and who you help and how you do it?
Felt Right is on its third iteration. So when I first started, I was doing small group yoga instruction with one-on-one general life coaching. And then once I got my first life coaching client, I was like, oh, I love, love, love this. Just kind of how you were talking about, you love journaling, but you really love helping people get a journaling practice. Like that was it for me. So I turned mostly to coaching. And then I was working with my coach, and she was, because I would write about all different kinds of stuff. And she's like, you know, you write about grief, like what's going on with that? Like grief has profoundly impacted and changed my life in ways that I hate and I love, and it's just been really instrumental. And she's like, what if you were to help people with their grief and being able to process it and move forward with it? I'm like, well, because I don't want to be grief girl and talking about this all the time. Like, no, thank you. And after the call, like I really thought about it, and I'm like, you know, the beauty of having my own business is that I can, as I evolve and change, my business can as well. So like, maybe I should try this out and see how it goes. And it has been the best thing I have ever done. And I can't imagine not doing this work, and just having this consistent message of like, what's the word? Like destigmatizing grief, or like having people, I don't want to say embrace. Actually, yes, I do. Embrace, because it's like when you have grief, it means the other side of that same coin is there's love and joy there. It's just in a different form. And to be able to transmute that, to alchemize that into creating a life for yourself that's beautiful, is just something that I've been able to do with my life. And if I can show another person how to do that too, icing on the cake.
So beautiful. And I can just feel, oh my gosh, like talking about words, like those words, how you describe grief. Like I was trying to explain to a friend of mine what you do. And I was like, oh my gosh, you just need to read her stuff because it's so beautiful. Because I've never thought of grief as like an especially good thing before, but you really have helped me see that it's beautiful, and that grief stems out of love and can be used in so many beautiful ways in our lives.
Yeah, it's that's what I want to do for whoever reads my stuff, is to it's a universal experience we will all have multiple times in our lives. And it's like, okay, accepting that this is going to happen doesn't take away the pain or the sting of it nonetheless, but it's like, no, there's still promise and there's still hope of a way forward. Your grief never goes away, but you learn how to carry it in a way that's lighter for you to move on.
Yeah, that is beautiful. So Emily, where can people find you?
I mean, if I'm not on a client call or doing a virtual coffee, I'm on LinkedIn. So I am there, Emily Griffith. I don't know if I even have like what my like link is. I could Emily Griffith, you can find me, trust me. I'm on TikTok, but I'm more on there like falling down rabbit holes and not really creating any content there. But I have my website, meetfeltright.com. You can always go to that. And really LinkedIn's the number one. I'm always on there.
Cool. And felt right is with a W, right? Like
Felt right was a W. Yes, WRIT.
Love it. So clever. Well, Emily, we are at time. Thank you so much for joining me for this conversation tonight. Really, really appreciate you, my friend.
Oh, same here. Thank you so much.
And thank you, everyone who's watching. We will see you again next time.
Bye.